Hello, my name is Todd McLaughlin, and I'm here at Native Yoga Center in Juno Beach, Florida. And I'm so happy that you're here. This is my Grow Your Yoga series that I offer every Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. Today's class is how to do downward facing dog. The Sanskrit term for downward dog is Adho Mukha Svanasana. Adho means down, Mukha means facing or face, and Svanasana is dog pose. So today I'll be giving you some tips and tricks on how to create a little bit more space in your downward facing dog. If you have any questions, type in the comments and I will address them to help personalize this live webinar for you. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. Downward facing dog. So let's say you have never practiced yoga before. This is your very first time coming onto a yoga mat. And one of the most classic poses in Hatha yoga or yoga practice that involves posture and breathing is the downward facing dog, Adho Mukha Svanasana. So a great way to start your downward facing dog practice is to come down onto your hands and knees. And what we want to discover is where our range of motion is with our toes and ankles. So the first thing I'd like for you to do is point your feet, land the tops of the feet on the floor, and assume what's called child's pose. Now, child's pose does require a fair amount of knee bending or knee flexion, in which case, if it's a little bit much, what you do is you start off on your hands and knees, you have your feet pointing, and slowly bring your hips back towards your heels, monitoring the sensation of your knees. Now, this is in a state of ankle positioning that's called plantar flexion. This is where your feet are pointing and the tops of the feet are on the floor. However, in downward dog, we actually take the other or the opposite range of motion, which is called dorsiflexion. So if you curl your toes under and try your downward dog, sometimes this is called puppy dog, somewhere in between the down dog and the child's pose, and do a nice big toe stretch. You can either practice sitting upward like this with full pressure down on your heels, but just get a feeling for, do you have the ability to do what's called toe extension? When your toes are this direction, it's extension. When your toes are curled, that's toe flexion. So what we want to do is first establish toe extension. Now, it might be painful to put that much pressure back on your feet. So what you do is you just start very simply placing the toes on the floor. Now, in some cases, I've seen where someone has the goal of actually touching the toes down and having the toes go into extension, but the toes don't actually move like that. When they're in full extension, the tips of the toes are here and there's not the ability to actually do the extension. So what you can do is bring your knees and feet together, straighten one leg behind you with the toes curled under. It'll be a little easier to access the calf stretch that is common in the downward facing dog. So in this shape, you're able to stretch into your Achilles tendon, which is right back here, your calf musculature, gastrocnemius and deep soleus. You can stretch this area here. And then obviously you'll do both legs at the same time to first start inspiring toe extension and dorsiflexion in your ankles. So this will help to create a little space in relation to opening up the back of your legs. All right, the next thing I'd like to investigate are the hands. There's a lot of different philosophies about, should I have my fingers apart? Should I have my fingers together? Should I have my middle fingers aiming forward? Should I have my index fingers aiming forward? Should I actually turn them inward a little bit? Let's start off real easy. Let's go with the middle fingers forward. And with that being said, another great strategy is to have your hands shoulder width apart. So a lot of times, if I go the width of my mat, in this case, the width of my rug, because my mat's really wide, but the width of the rug, it's a little bit narrow of the exact width of the rug or mat. So your pinky fingers will be on the inside edge of your mat. And if we align the shoulders directly above the wrists, then we get pretty good alignment here, as opposed to being really wide, obviously. And every now and again, you'll see a down dog where people have their hands really, really close together. I'm going to suggest let's start off with a pretty good stable structure, which is having your hands underneath your shoulders. And also with your fingers, you have what are called the root of the fingers, where the fingers attach onto your hand. We want to try to press the root of the fingers down against the yoga mat while you're practicing your down dog. So with that being said, then you align your shoulders above your wrist and start off with this toe curled under position. And we're pretty much ready to start to explore pressing down to lift the hips up into the downward facing dog. All right, so let's give it a try. So the first thing that we can do to just make sure that the amount of weight you're putting on your hands, shoulders, and wrist is appropriate is start to go with cat pose, which is where you round your spine and really work on locking out your elbows so that your arms are really strong and straight. And then from here, test the waters and see if you can press down a little bit into your toes and have your knees come just a little bit off the floor, like 1 inch, half an inch, 1 inch. And just now, when you're floating like this, the knees above, how do your wrists feel? How do your shoulders feel? If everything's feeling great, we're going to go all the way for the downward dog. If you have any shoulder tears or shoulder issues that you don't need to be putting a lot of weight on your arms just yet, then I want you to stay in the cat-cow position. All right, if we're ready for the downward dog, then really basically you're just pressing and pulling the knees back, pressing the knees back, pushing into your palms, and let your head drop down through your shoulders. Now you can see that my heels are down on the floor. And what I've noticed and heard from students is that if the heels are way up in the air and we're resting here, that this can be a very difficult position. Once you've gotten really good at down dog, you think, can't everybody do down dog? It should be no problem at all. But actually, down dog can be a miserable pose when you're brand new to yoga. I mean, it really can be challenging. I've had students afterward come up and say, oh, that down dog just killed me the whole time. And I'm like, really? I didn't even know. So now I do. And that's why I want to encourage you different ways that you can kind of build your dog. You can build your down dog. All right, so we figured out we've got to work on this ability to have the toes curled under first. We work on the ability to have our fingers separated. If you have your knees on the ground, see if you can first lift your knees up. Then we discover, okay, I'm here. What am I trying to do now? So one thing you can focus on is, are you able to straighten your legs all the way? So this is one ingredient that's a part of down dog. Now you can do down dog with bent knees. Notice what I'm doing. I'm leaning my shoulders back away from my hands, pressing into the palms and attempting to bring the hips up toward the ceiling while we bring our head down through the arms. Okay, now this requires a fair amount of shoulder flexibility, and that also is one of the big challenges when learning down dog. If you go to take your arms above your head and your arms are unable to reach all the way vertically above, then this will present a strength challenge for you, which is really good. However, let me give you another way that you can start to open your shoulders. So one option is to come down on your elbows in the puppy dog shape with your toes curled under, and to bring your head down as far as you can through your shoulders and to bend your elbows and work on stretch your armpit area, your lats. Your lats are the muscles that attach your latissimus dorsi, attach on down here at the thoracolumbar aponeurosis, which is this area on your lower hip, and they come up around the side body and attach onto your humerus bone. So your swimmer's muscle, when you take a stroke or a paddle and you pull your arms back to stroke, that's your lat contracting. Well, sometimes that's tight. You go to bring your arms up. And so when that translates that when you go to down dog, then it's a struggle because it's kind of like doing a high push-up. You're holding here and sometimes the arms start to shake. So a good way to start to work the shoulder flexibility is to bring the hips down toward the heels and to work in the child's pose and to start to open up the downward facing dog position with your arms above your head and start to exercise stretching your shoulders here before putting a whole bunch of pressure onto your shoulders. I just want to check and see if I've had any comments thus far so I can start to address any questions. Aha, yes, Tamara, thank you so much for asking this. What do I do if my wrists hurt? Aha, good question. And I remember, T, when you started practicing the down dog, that was something that you mentioned, that your wrist felt really exhausting and sore or tired from doing a lot of work on the wrist. Now, okay, let me start to answer that. If your If you have a wrist injury, that's why I think don't go into the full down dog yet. Start off in the cat-cow position and start to just apply reasonable pressure into the palms. And as you lean forward, what we'll want to do is we start to exercise this work with the root of the fingers, right? So what's real common is that people will go into the pose and the hand knuckle like lifts up. So the hand knuckles will kind of like create this dome effect. So one of the big ones is to be able to actually flatten the palms. And so that's one of the first things that we'll start working out. There's a lot of different wrist stretches that we can do to start to rehab the wrist, such as wrist. This is called wrist extension. You can do some wrist flexion exercises, being very gentle, bringing the wrist forward into the flexion position. And you can use the opposite hand to work a little bit of massage work and or stretching work like so. The other element is to do some wrist rotation exercises where you just move your hands in a circular motion, your wrists in a circular motion. Another great one when you're on your hands and knees is to separate the fingers and rock the body a little forward, and then to initiate coming back, push your fingertips down into the floor, which will cause this movement backward. And then when you go to come forward again, try to see if you can lift the fingers a little off of the floor and come forward, and then land your hands onto the floor, fingers in the floor, press into the floor, and just do this really gentle rocking motion forward and back, and start to get a feeling for like how the wrists are feeling. I think if you start here, and so whenever you're in a class situation or a practice situation, a home practice situation, and you feel like you're having a wrist challenge, then I suggest you cow pose for your up dog, cat pose for your down dog, and then while you're in down dog, just hold right here and apply just enough pressure that your hands and wrists start to rehab. Thank you for asking that, Tamara. Much appreciated. All right, let me see. I think I saw another question come through. Aha, John. Nice to see you. Hey, Todd. I have some shoulder issues and experience shoulder pain in down dog. Any suggestions? Yes, I do have some suggestions, John. Thank you so much for asking. Shoulder pain. Whew, this is a big one. This is a very common injury or issue in vinyasa yoga or yoga practices where we are doing a lot of chaturanga dandasana. Chaturanga dandasana is the 4-limb staff pose. This is the one where we come down and we start to balance in the chaturanga. All right, so now in the down dog, because we're just focusing on down dog today, yes, there's a lot of things you can do. And I was on that subject just a moment before I went over to see if there's questions. So this one is a great one in terms of the flexion of the shoulders, being able to drop or relax the head down and work into the shoulder flexion. Okay, so now in down dog, because when we go to down dog, we're attempting to work deeper into this stretch. What we can observe here is that we're actually putting pressure on our arms. That means our arms are weight bearing. Now, when they're weight bearing, you are applying strength and flexibility together. There's a way to work shoulder flexibility without having any weight bearing. So another way that we can start to inspire this range of motion, take the weight off of the arms, apart from the fact when you raise your arms above your head, the arms weigh a couple pounds, maybe more. And so what we're going to do is, that is a little bit of weight bearing, right? We are bearing weight against gravity, but there's a lot less pressure. We're not using weights. I do really like the Indian clubs a lot. I've been working with those a lot, where you can swing some weight with your arms. But for the purpose of this video, what I'd like for you to focus on is you can work on just actually stretching the shoulder using the aid of your opposite hand to move it this way. Another range of motion that's interesting is taking the arms out, and we have internal rotation where you try to drop your hands down, keeping your elbows about shoulder width. And then we have external rotation where you pull your hands back. So we can explore internal and external rotation of the humerus at the shoulder joint. And this is a really great way to build some of the range of motion exercise in the shoulders. Now, another classic range of motion is to go into extension, where we take our arms behind the back. So a good way, and these are the opposite movements that are done in the down dog, but a good way to work the wrist, this actually applies to the wrist and the shoulders, is to take the hands behind the back and do a little bit of shoulder extension exercise as well. Okay, and then so we've worked a couple different ranges of motions in relation to the shoulder. And again, a lot, because the wrist and the shoulder are obviously connected along the same chain, a lot of these advice will apply both to wrist and to shoulder. However, again, if I have a shoulder issue, I think for a little while, eliminate chaturanga or allow chaturanga to be a very gentle elbow bend where you don't really work the shoulders too much. You just apply a little bit of pressure. If you are including upward dog, you can work into your upward dog. But in your down dog, slowly you get your knees up. Okay, now I'm just going to see how far can I press back. And I'm just going to observe the sensation of my shoulder. My shoulders feel great. My shoulders feel great. I start to feel a little bit of strain in my shoulder where I have my injury. This is where I'm going to encourage back off. Don't go as far. Back to where shoulder feels great. And just hold. Try to build a lot of strength in the area where you are attempting to rehab just off the pain sensation. And then if you can apply a little more pressure and very gradually work into that range of motion with the shoulder while you're weight bearing, this is a really good strategy that we apply all over the body in any injury situation or pain situation. Find out, one, where am I okay? Like, okay might mean doing absolutely nothing for a little bit and just letting your arms rest here. I feel fine, my shoulders feel fine, but as soon as I go to lift my arm, it hurts. So then we find where our baseline is. All right, so let's see, other elements in terms of that, both with shoulder and wrist, is somewhere that's in line of what's called Pinchamayurasana. Pinchamayurasana is where we actually start to balance on our forearms and raise up. But that's not the pose we're focusing on. We're working on down dog. But what we're going to do is we're going to make Pinchamayurasana arms, which means let's try to bring our forearms parallel to each other. Oh, good. I'm coming in close here on my 20-minute mark. I try to keep these sessions around 20 minutes, so I'll wrap it up. So if you have your forearms about parallel to each other here, and then slowly, gently do that exercise where we do the cat and the cow. And this way, this really encourages external rotation in the shoulders. There's a lot of debate these days about should yoga teachers be cueing external rotation? If external rotation is not necessary for the shoulder joint, is it okay to have a little bit of internal rotation? I think the answer to this question really boils down to, like, how do my shoulders feel when I'm doing it? And is there a way that I can adjust the position to help to build strength in different ranges of motions around the joint? So a really good one, if you need to separate your elbows a little bit, I'll turn this way so you can see my alignment. Here, my arms are parallel to each other. Here, I have my elbows out a little bit wider. A lot of times we'll hear only do this if your elbows and arms are parallel. But I think if you let a little of this internal rotation happen where you interlace your fingers like a headstand, or you bring your hands together, is also a good way to work in the shoulders. So either having your hands together, elbows shoulder width apart, or hands separate, elbows the same with the shoulders, and press. This is also a really good shoulder strength rotation exercise. Cool. I hope that helps John and anyone else that has a shoulder challenge in the downward dog. Let me just check out, see if I have any other questions or comments. All right. Thanks you so much, everybody, for tuning in. If you have a specific posture, breathing practice, meditation question, something in the realm of yoga, remember you can send them my way, info@nativeyogacenter.com. Remember, you can check us out on our website, nativeyogacenter.com. We have classes available online. We have classes available on YouTube. If you're on YouTube now watching, please, if you hit the subscribe button and the little bell to be notified, every time I do a video on Thursday, it'll alert you. And if you want to tune in, you can join in, ask more questions. I'm super excited about the podcast I'm about to release tomorrow with Janne Kontala from Finland, a philosophy teacher who is amazing. I can't wait for you to hear this one. All right. So I think that about covers it. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. This video is being filmed right after Thanksgiving here in 2023. Coming up on the new year. It's going to be an exciting 2024. That's for sure. All right. All right. Well, until next Thursday, I will see you then. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Namaste.